All right, everyone. Sorry about that. I just had to pop my pants on. Wearing my ugly sweater here. How are you guys doing? Let me know if the audio's coming through. Let me bring up the wheel. Who do we have in here so far? We've got Secret Weapon Beats. We've got Deleg. We've got Jay Shiggity. And we've got Cora, Red Octane, Dark Brandon. How's it going, everyone? Hopefully, you guys are having a good day. Joe the Stickman. This is a very awful sweater. It's hideous, but for some reason I just like wearing it. I don't know why. Not a finished beat. Mix needs work. I see. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying the pack. So just as a summary, this week's... Am I in frame actually right now? Ugh. So yeah, this assignment was to take the Boom Bap sound pack that you all got for free. Dion Williams, how's it going? And make a beat out of it. The idea being the pack is made up of one-shots, and so just forces people who may be a little bit more used to using samples or loops to be forced to make something from scratch fundamentally. And also there's something about like using one-shots instead of plugins. You're just sort of stuck with that sound as it is. You can't use any parameters to manipulate it. So yeah, I think it was a cool idea here. This is one of the challenges or assignments that we do every once in a while using one-shots. So hopefully you guys have been liking the pack. Sherby, how's it going? You work the sweater and hat. The hat is purely because my hair is wild right now. I need to get a haircut. That's coming up on Tuesday. Mic is sounding good. Okay, let's do our audio test. Let me quickly jump into one of these beats here and use my new mute button. Where is it? There we go. So let me know if the audio is coming in. And if so, we'll start spinning. Dark Brandon, T Breezy in the Discord. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. Hopefully audio is good as well. Awesome. All right, let's just jump right into it. Was I not supposed to tweak the sounds? You're definitely allowed to tweak the sounds. Don't feel bad about that at all. Feel free to add effects and whatnot. But I'm just saying, like, inherently, when it comes to one-shots versus sounds that come from like a plugin, plugins allow for a lot more change and versatility. You can change the shape a lot more easily. There's going to be modulation that you can add or remove, blah, blah, blah. But you're sort of a little bit more stuck with the sound as it is with a one-shot. But yeah, don't worry if you guys added plugins and whatnot. That's part of it, because you're going to need to use plugins to like reshape sounds to get them to fit together at times. So yeah, I just realized I did not grab my notebook, so I'll quickly grab that with a pencil and then we'll get started. Give me 1 second here. And here we go. Let us get right into it. Hopefully you guys are having a nice warm Sunday. Here we got the sun out. Spring's coming. And yeah. Let's just go ahead and spin. How about that, guys? I don't think I had anything else on my brain to say. Let me know if there's a couple things, I guess. If you're someone who did buy the pack and you did not realize that it came with the course, because like I mentioned, I always give you guys all the updates for free. If you ended up paying for it to only realize after that you could have got it for free, feel free to DM me or email me and I'll just give you a refund. No questions asked. Just let me know what email you use to sign up, just so I can confirm that you're in the course, and I'll refund you completely. So that's one thing I want to say. Snowy Sunday. Sorry to hear that. Secondly, as you guys can see, we have quite a bit of submissions this time around, a little bit more than usual. And so if I'm unable to get to your beat and review it within the actual stream itself, you will be getting a follow-up email with a full text review from one of these senior Better Beatmaker members. So do not worry, you will get your beat reviewed one way or another. As long as you submitted it before the deadline. I exported all the beats even half an hour after the deadline. So any latecomers, if your name's not on here, I think Deleg said you're not popping up. That means you were more than half an hour late. And so I'm going to be strict with the deadline. I was very lenient before for months and months now, but you have to submit an hour before, which is exactly what I said in the Discord. So let's just go ahead and spin it up. We have the first beat that we'll listen to by Rosfo, a newer member here. Well done to Rosfo. We got some beginner's luck here. Let's check out Rosfo's beat. Where are you at, Rosfo? There you are. And once again, please feel free to share your opinions and thoughts in the chat. You guys always have great insights that sometimes I don't pick up on. So yeah, we're all here to help each other get better at making beats. So feel free to address positives and negatives. So here we go. Rosfo's beat. Alright, this was Rosfo's beat, Leather Jeans. A nice 90 BPM beat here. So Dion Williams says, love the drums on this. Nice vibe, says Severin. Nice vibe, says John. Cool arrangement, says Joe. The drum patterns are super nice. Love the amount of space and the melody for an artist. The chorus part sounds a bit stocky, sound-ish. The vibe is strong for sure. Maybe a little velocity tweaking on the kick for some added realism, and then 20 tape plugins. Possibly couldn't tell if that was a little out of key. Laid back, says Dark Brandon. It's possibly out of key, making it sound that way, says John Sherby. So yeah, I think for me, some of the things that I picked up on here, Joe says could be more spatial variety. So that's something that I put down, which is in terms of just focusing on the loop, I think this beat did a lot of good things. We have a little bit more of a melodic bass line, which is a little bit difficult to program especially when you're starting out. I would say that the drum pattern was also pretty good. The sound choice, I think, was good as well. But to the point of what Deleg mentioned, I think all the sounds, pretty much all of them, were a little bit dry. They didn't have much spatial variation in terms of the depth. So you had the bell sound or the mallet sound, which was pretty dry, and the synth that came in the second half of the verse, which was also dry. And then during the hook, we had those additional sounds like the horn and the second horn, and all of those were dry. I think what I probably would have done was just try to figure out a way to add a little bit more depth to the beat. I would have probably taken the mallet sound and maybe just added like a delay or reverb on it. Yeah, like that vibraphone there, adding a little bit of reverb, just so it has like a longer tail and it just fills up a little bit more room. And then when you have that synth coming in the second half of the verse, like you can keep that dry, or vice versa could work as well. You could keep the vibraphone a little bit more dry and then have that synth be the thing that sort of sits in the back with a little bit more depth. I do agree that during the hook, the second horn was a little bit off key. That wah wah, I think that was a little bit off, but nonetheless, I do want to applaud Rosvo for actually taking the steps to making a full structured beat. So you have the verse section, and then you have like the sort of B side of the verse, which had a little bit more textures in terms of that synth, and then we had a lot more textures for the hook. And so I want to say good job to Rosvo for actually taking the extra step and pushing the arrangement and making the beat complete and full. So that was really awesome to see. I'm always a big advocate for just adding small amounts of variation, even just dropping the drums every once in a while, or taking the bass pattern and then creating like a small little switch up every like 8th bar or something. That can really go a long way. But I do want to say to Rosvo, like, good job on the arrangement and pushing it. Like I mentioned, he is a newer member. So GTA 2 type beat. I love GTA 2. That was probably my favorite one, the top down one. As you can tell, I'm old as hell. So yeah, that is the thing that I feel I took away with this beat. I think the loop was constructed in a very good way. I think the drum pattern and the sounds that were used in terms of the frequency spaces, everything was filled up. The drum pattern was good as well. To the point of maybe adding a little bit of velocity tweaking for the kick. That's definitely a good idea. But overall, I think the big thing that could have helped this beat was just a little bit more depth and just taking one of the sounds, adding a little bit more reverb onto it, and then just addressing that second horn. But other than that, I think Rosvo's got a good start here. I think this is a good beat that was well put together. A lot of the fundamentals are there, so I'm happy to see that. Let's jump in to yet another beat. This one is going to be from a young buck by the name of, my God, who's it going to be? Oh, okay, it's going to be Marcin. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Markin. I'm not quite sure. Right here, one of the early submissions on the 20th. Eager fella. So let's take a listen to the beat here. All right. This is K44. The beat's called Raw. Got a very aggressive, darker beat there. Let's see what you guys are saying. Nice bass. Drums may be a bit hot, but love the vibe. Piano is a nice touch. My ears really wish for a chord change in the second bar of this one. Awesome work though, especially the drum sounds. I love how punchy this is. Piano is nice, but feels a little bit out of place to my ear. I'm in love with the last chord of the progression. Super crunchy. Sounds are all great. Something's a bit loud. I can't tell what I want to turn down though. Really like the arrangement. Great job of bringing in layers in and out. The extra sounds are cool, but the initial piano sound seems to be out of key. Really like the core idea. Try out to do some sort of switch up to keep the listener's attention, says Deleg. So yeah, I think I'm on agreement with a lot of you guys. I think the drum selection was really, really good in terms of picking very colorful sounds to really fill up a lot of space. They were a bit hot. They were a bit loud, I should say. But nonetheless, I do think that's a very easy fix. I just do really like the sound choice for the drums. So as you guys know, like I mentioned in the course, if you have like a little bit of a more thin loop and you don't have as much going on, it's going to be really helpful to take very colorful drums and use those to fill up your beat in terms of how much frequency they take up. Good job with the bass line as well. We had a little bit more of a bouncy bass line, and I really love the way that it sounded and it sort of sat in the beat. You don't necessarily need the bass to be like super subby. You don't need everything to hit hard like an 808. Oftentimes having these little bit more like mellow and thinner basses just to have something that sits in the low end can be a great way to, for one, have your beat sound full, but also make something that's a little bit more melodic, a little bit more fast moving. If you have this extremely dense bass texture and it's just going all over the place, it can really overpower and become overbearing. But using a little bit of a weaker bass texture, it really helps you achieve a better balance and not overwhelm the beat with how much movement is happening with such a dominant, powerful sound. You can really hear that in a lot of Pete Rock's older beats. So that's really good with the bass line. Dion says, mixing wise, everything feels like it has its own space, just with like a little bit more variation in the arrangement. Great beat. So I will say I picked up on what John Sherby was mentioning as well. So I think when Marcin, I apologize, when Marcin used one shots that were just single notes, I think he did a good job of creating his own patterns that really fit in well and really worked. But there were certain one shots that he used that were from the Ear Candy folder, if I'm not mistaken. And some of the things that I created in there were longer phrases, so multiple notes. And when you use those, you sort of do need to be careful to make sure that every single one of those notes, it might be like 3 or 4 notes, you need to make sure that all of them sound good within the actual loop that you're making. And oftentimes when I use those types of phrases in my beats, if there are, usually it'll sound good, like 1 or 2 notes might sound good, and I'll literally go in and start like cutting out certain sounds, and I'll sort of just create my own pattern at times using sort of pieces from the phrases as opposed to just keeping it all in there. And so I do want to say that with Marcin's beat here, he did a great job of using one shots to create his own patterns. But to what John Sherby also mentioned, there were certain one shots in here that were the longer phrases. It sounded like that some of the notes were out of key. So just be careful when you use those types of samples. You might have to go in and just cut certain notes out to make sure that every single note actually sounds good, or do some repitching, etc., etc. So when you have that problem, just take it one note at a time. Just listen to whether, you in FL Studio, you can change the start time or the sample length, and you can literally just listen note by note to make sure every single one of those sounds good. And when you identify the one note or the 2 notes that don't sound like they fit in with your actual loop, you can just do some creative sampling approaches to address that. But I really do like what Cora mentioned, the approach here of using different one shots and different ear candy to create the arrangement. So there were certain parts of the beat where we had a lot of different layers coming in and sit on top of the beat. And then we went back to like the verse section that was a little bit more of the straightforward loop. A very sort of like alchemist approach with how he approaches his arrangement. So I think that's really awesome that Marcin used that approach. Deleg says, or put auto-tune on the instrument and choose the right key. For sure, that is a good idea as well. So yeah, I think the core loop here was really awesome. I just think some of the patterns or some of the samples, the phrases that were used to sit on top of that core loop could have used a little bit of change. And to what I think Crowtown mentioned, it would have been nice if maybe instead of having the exact same chord play over and over again, maybe have a new chord every once in a while. That could have been nice. But yeah, overall, good job, Marcin. Very dark and eerie type of beat here. And so that might be why there's a sort of repetitive note used just to keep it aggressive and have it that sort of monotonous, dark feeling in it, which is definitely understandable. But the big thing is just make sure you're careful with the samples that you add on top to your arrangement, because some of them might not be the right fit for what you're making. So let's spin it up. Is it Joe the Stickman? We've got Joe's beat up next. Joe's in the chat, I believe. I've seen him in here. Maybe he ran off and he's in the shower right now. If so, I hope he comes back.
It's a little stick man.
right, that was Joe's beat. I'm gonna get that smooth fade out here. Flying High, a boom bap type beat by Joe. So let's see what the chat is saying here. I like the bass again, love the sound choices and the bass too. I struggle with those super high frequency tones, but this was very well done. Extra creep factor, always a plus. That hook though, I can't tell if everything is in key with a lot of tension or a little out of key. Love the eerie aesthetic though. The sax, I believe it is cool. That sax is a great additional touch. Yeah, the sax placement was nice, especially the cuts added. So with this beat, I really love the core sounds that were used, especially, I'm not even sure which sound this was from the pack, but like that jingling bell there at the beginning.
It's a little stick man.
And that sort of sounds like a Fender Rhodes sitting underneath. I really love those two sounds in combination. Deluxe's sax is cool. The guitar sounds a bit stockish, but great beat though. Yeah, and I think this is really great manipulation because, like I mentioned, I can't even really tell which sound that was, that sort of jingling bell. I'm not sure what was that. I guess it's from the bell pack, but I can't even remember making something that sounds like that. So yeah, great manipulation. It sounds like you added like some delay or maybe some granular sort of effects on top of it. So I think I really loved that part of it. Good job with the bass line and the bass as well. Again, we have this really bouncy bass and bass line. Same type of approach where it's not this huge, overwhelming bass that's gonna really get in the way and like sort of overwhelm the beat. I think Joe did a good job of choosing something that was a bit less dominant, but that allowed him to really open it up and create something that was a little bit more bouncy, a little bit more melodic, and still have a good balance in the beat. Joe says it was a bell I accidentally pitched super high, but loved how it sounded, so I used it. Yeah, I really loved the way it sounded too. Did you add some of your own delay on top of it, I wonder? That was a good use of it nonetheless. I really like the effort that was put in with the hook as well. You really picked up the energy. You created more complex patterns, and yeah, I think you did a good job of doing that and picking up the amount of energy. The one repetitive note though, like what Red Octane mentioned, I can't tell if everything's in key or there's like a lot of tension. That one repetitive note, something about it. I have a hard time figuring out why that sticks out to me a little bit more than it does. Like the fact that it's playing the same note over and over again, I don't think that's a problem. I don't think that the rhythm itself is a problem. I'm wondering if it's like you have the bell which sits in the high end, and then you have that Fender Rhodes that's sitting underneath, and I'm wondering if the Fender Rhodes should be made a little bit more dominant and loud. And to what I think as Deleg said, like some of the sounds feel a little bit more dry. No, it had that tail already. Interesting. Yeah, it's just below the tonic to my ear. I thought it was catchy. So yeah, I'm not sure. Again, this might be my own lack of music theory knowledge. I don't know if it's the actual incorrect note that's playing or if it's just sitting in a place in the beat where maybe like it sounds very dominant, it sounds dry, and it's very upfront. And I'm wondering whether this sound would be better suited as a little bit more of a detail, something that's made a little bit weaker by taking like an EQ and rooting out a lot of the lower frequencies and then filling up that space that you just lost with the Fender Rhodes sitting underneath. And so that way the Fender Rhodes becomes a little bit more dominant, and that guitar sound is positioned to be a little bit more weak, just because it's just hard for me. I'm not 100% sure why. Like I'd have to go in and experiment, but it's that sound is sticking out to me for some reason. I'm not sure what it is. It could have been the wobble I put on it. So I did notice that there was like some slight pitch changing, but I don't know if that is the issue. I think if you just addressed that and maybe made some slight changes, you might have to experiment to see what it is. My inkling is that it just might be sitting in the wrong fruit, or sorry, it's just a little bit more dominant than maybe it should be. I think the POI of the beat should be that like bell and the Fender Rhodes. Those two sounds feel to me as the most interesting part of the beat that I really loved. And maybe using the guitar, I think that's a guitar, as a little bit more of a detail and not be as dominant. because like the other two sounds are like a little bit more ethereal, a little bit more wobbly, or say not wobbly, a little bit more thin. And then we have this sound come out of nowhere. So maybe it's like a strange juxtaposition of like these very sort of spacey sounds, a little bit more thin. And then we have this very dry guitar that sounds very abrupt. Yeah, it's hard to put my finger on exactly what it might be. So I would say just try out some of the things that I mentioned here of like maybe making that sound less dominant. You might have to like push it back in the depth and then see how the beat sounds if you brought some of the other sounds a little bit more forward. I just think where it's positioned in the beat might be the issue. Or it might just be as simple as the incorrect note is being played. So I think trying those two as a way to troubleshoot this beat. But nonetheless, I really, really love what you did with that bell. Like that was really awesome. I love how eerie this beat sounds as well. I would say this is probably my favorite thing that you made so far. It just feels very sophisticated. The textures that you used here feel very unique and have a lot of personality. So that's one good thing. Even that guitar that sort of sticks out. Nonetheless, one thing that I can't say is it doesn't sound like it's like a stocky weird, like a stocky plain sound that I hear all over the place. I think this beat has a lot of personality, which I really, really liked and appreciated. So good job to Joe for putting this loop together in this very eerie beat. Yeah, I think maybe you're suited towards using one-shots. Maybe that could be a thing. So let's put you in orange and let's spin it up. Who's up next? We've got SW Beats. We've got no drama today so far with this wheel. You want the drama wheel, bring it to us. Secret Weapons Beats, I'll believe he's also in the chat. So let's see what his beats are all about.
That shit don't even look right. Me take a loss, that shit don't even look right. Me take a loss, that shit don't even look right. The funky man, this is Secret Beat, man. I take notes like a newspaper. I take notes like a newspaper. The funky man, you know what my motherfucking name is. I take notes like a newspaper.
That was Secret Weapon Beats with the big L sample there. He says, I did it wrong. Use drums, horns, some ear candy. Does that mean you use like outside samples, I guess? Great beat, says Crowtown. The vibe is there, but stab hits sound out of key, but that switch up is nice. Coming in and out to the main section was so satisfying after the chaotic intro. Feels a little messy, but it's got that boom bap vibe for sure. Though it almost feels like too much changes going on, but I love the sample chorus. I really like it as a standalone beat, but it feels it's a bit busy if intended for an artist. Very colorful funk master flex vibe, great skill showcase, awesome mix. Really like the beat, I like it much. Don't know if it's too busy for a rapper to hop on. Try to be more minimalistic at sometimes it feels like the instruments are out of key, but I like that. Not from the pack. So everything from the pack, that's well done there. So I definitely do agree with some of the comments that were made here. I think you did a really, really good job of putting like the loop together. This really felt as if it was like an old school beat, and I guess like during the hook, once you had like those big L vocal samples and you had like the pianos underneath, everything really felt cohesive. And then you jump to like yet another idea, and that idea also sounded cohesive. But I guess the big thing is that it felt like this has multiple different ideas in it that were pretty different from one another, and I think I would have liked to hear how it sounded if you pursued either one or the other. So for example, like the hook has like those pianos and whatnot, and just like the chat mentioned, I do think those horn stabs are a little bit out of key, but nonetheless, like everything in the loop outside of that, really well done and put together. I love like the eerie dark piano, and the drums that you used here were really perfect. The bass is great. And then we have this other beat here, which is really, it's yet another really cool beat. Such cool textures in here. Everything sounds very detailed and everything sounds very cohesive, but it's just very different than the sounds and the textures that were used and the sort of fundamental feeling and idea that we had in the section before. So I think the way both beats were put together, like I would have liked one or the other. Yeah, just like people said, a great showcase of skill, and this is really well done and put together. I think just pursuing one idea or the other would have been great. But yeah, outside of that, I don't really have anything negative to say for the actual ideas that you built in here. Like people mentioned, I think the horns on the hook section are a bit strong, and that is a little bit more of a dense section. So if you did pursue that idea and you made that into the verse, you know, it's just simple as getting rid of the horns plus the vocal sample, and then you have a very good verse loop. So yeah, I think for what you built here, you've definitely showed off that you have a lot of skill and a lot of talent in terms of putting a beat together. I'm curious to hear your reasoning for why you sort of had these two different ideas and you try to put them together, as opposed to putting one full beat idea together. Because I would say, you know, if you're worried about like, I'm worried if my beat's going to sound too boring if I just have one idea, I think that is probably needless. That's an unnecessary fear to have if that is what's motivating you. I think if you took one of these ideas, one or the other, I think this would have been a great beat, even if it lasts for like 3 minutes and you use the more conventional arrangement ideas, like adding more sounds on top. I think you would have had a phenomenal beat. So if that's the reason why you had this approach, I'd say, you know, don't worry. I think having such a strong loop as you did here with either one of these ideas, you would have easily been able to make this a full, interesting sounding beat. So yeah, good job to SW Beats. A little bit chaotic beat there, but the fundamental ideas underneath all the ideas, the different ideas in the beat, I think were very strong. I would have liked to hear one or the other. Let's take a listen to Dos Doses beat. I believe that's how you pronounce it. He messaged me and said it's pronounced Dos Dos. Might be wrong though. I don't know. So let's take a listen. Here we go. This is taking forever. There we go. we got Dose Dose Beat, Devour. Let's see what the chat is saying there. Somewhere in a dark alley, great eerie vibe. Could see Denzel Curry going in on this. Maybe a little heavy in the low mid lows, but I love this. I think that's my ear in that I particularly enjoy beats that are like heavier in the low and low end. So it didn't really jump out to me as an issue. Love the crunch and texture. The bass tone is so brooding, but one note in there feels off to me. Great vibe. John Sherby says that the pad in the back sounds a bit out of key with the rest. Not sure if it's me though. So I did pick up on something in here that did feel a bit off. So first I want to say really love the drum work in this beat. That sort of slight reverb on the drum sounds is really awesome. Such a great way to have that sort of eerie feeling. So that's something I do every once in a while, where I put like a slight reverb on my hi-hats, and it can really give you that like almost Mob Deep type of feel. Joe says great vibes. That one string synth that comes over the top takes a little bit too much space in his opinion. So yeah, really awesome dark feel to this beat. With what Jay Shiggity said, I guess this beat is like a tale of two different halves, and that the first half is a little bit different in that we have a bass line that's a little bit more melodic and a little bit more complex. So I do think one of the notes for that bass line is off. I think the one that the second note there feels a little bit off, but outside of that, I really do like everything else that was used in here. And then we have the second half of the beat, which sort of feels a bit different. It feels like it's structured in a little bit more of a trap way, and the bass line changes in that we get something that's a little bit more monotonous, a little bit more straightforward to create an even more aggressive feeling. Oh, this stupid Google Drive thing. Hold on. So yeah, we get something that's a little bit more trap-esque there, to the point that you guys are making, where some of the sounds are a little bit overpowered, and a little bit too upfront. That sort of weird ear candy that I created might be a little bit too forward. I actually really like the way it sounds in terms of the actual choice and what you use to fill up space in the beat. I think that's true for this whole beat entirely. I really love the sound selection, and every single sound that was used was just very particular and very unique. And like I said, even with the drum work, the way you made them interesting in terms of adding reverb to create this sort of very dark, very moody feel, I think everything that was done was really, every single choice that was done in terms of which sounds to use, really awesome. It's just small things like I mentioned, like the chat mentioned, where one of the bass notes felt a little bit off, and during the second half of the beat, just reducing the presence of one of those sounds could have been a better balance. But yeah, overall, I think I would have also liked, just like we talked about in the last beat, a little bit more of a conventional idea, in that I would have liked to hear how the beat sounded if it was a little bit structured normally with just one idea, as opposed to the two different ideas we had here. But then again, you know, beat switch-ups are a thing, so I don't want to get too critical of that. Yeah, I think we have this very cool, rough-sounding beat here. I don't really feel as though there's much to say about it in terms of negative aspects. I really liked a lot of it. It's just those small little ideas that you guys in the chat also mentioned that could have used some adjustment. But other than that, yeah, I didn't feel as though this had any glaring issues with it. It was a really cool, well-done, put-together beat. And I think he used the sound pack very well in that it focuses on a lot of like the more unique sounds that I provided. And I think that really bled through in the beat because it had a lot of unique textures in it. Let's see what else we got here. We've got a bodies beat. Still no drama. The wheel is it's not having it. Here we go. A bodies beat. was a very dark beat there by A Body. Kind of reminded me of Suicidal Thoughts by Notorious B.I.G. Kid Cudi hums anyone? Wow, says Jay Shady. Love the tension moving from the second note to the third. Really leaves you hanging, waiting for the drop. Pretty cool. Goes into places I wasn't expecting at first. I would have loved for a better relation between the bass and that snare. Interesting. Great atmospheric minimalist vibe. Drums a little boring, says Dark Brandon. This is amazing. The dark atmosphere and subtle atonality really makes my skin crawl. I love it. Are the bass and the other instruments in key with each other? Like the dark ambient, would like some melodic instrument in the front. As much as I love the first half, I wish the energy did pick up a bit for the second half. Cool though, I could see someone with a shouty voice going over it. I can feel it slowing me down physically, but in a good way. Yeah, I think you guys are on point here. I really love how atmospheric and minimal and dark and moody this is. I think A Body did a great job. Like I mentioned, this really has me thinking about like Suicidal Thoughts by Notorious B.I.G., a beat by Lord Finesse, I believe. So yeah, I think what A Body did here, great job of creating that very atmospheric pad in the background. Like that's not even a sound that I created for this pack, and so obviously a lot of manipulation was probably done by A Body to make sure, or sorry, to create that texture. That's a perfect explanation. Easy to flow on, says Secret Weapons. So yeah, I think great manipulation was done to create a lot of the sounds. I really love that stab, that piano, the electric piano stab that was used very infrequently. Such a great way to just keep the beat from being like a very monotonous beat, and like just the way that beat was structured, very minimal, and the way that that sound was introduced. Yeah, just helped the beat to keep on moving without being bogged down a bit too much. These types of beats is going to be a challenge in like making sure you don't make the beat a little bit too minimal and like just have nothing going on. But I think A Body, with the amount of small detail he used all over the place, did a great job in constructing a loop and sort of having sounds appear every once in a while to make sure that we have this sort of re-engagement over and over again. To what Red Octane mentioned, he said, I love the first half. I wish that energy did pick up a bit for the second half. So the way the beat was structured was a little bit unconventional in that it was just like a very slow rise up, and then we have the end. If this is structured a little bit more conventionally, I think what a good idea might have been would be to, you know, have the beat as it is, and then for the hook, maybe just introduce that ARP that we had at the very end of the beat, and then have that be the sound, and that would have also addressed what Deleg mentioned, which is would like some melodic instrument in the front. You know, with this type of minimal beat, you don't want that type of ultra melodic pattern to be constantly playing throughout the beat, but I think what that ARP would help is just have something that sits a little bit more up front, a little bit more movement that will catch our attention, and that can also work as a great way to have the energy pick up for like a hook, and then we have a little bit more of a conventional structure and having that go in and out. You say your sweater is ugly, but my girlfriend really likes it. Well, thank you very much. So yeah, I think really loved how dark this is, and like these types of beats are very hard to do. And it requires you to just have like the audacity to be like, this is the beat, fuck it. Like this is going to be how minimal it is. And I think what A Body did with how much detail and textures were used and how he manipulated the sounds, he did a really phenomenal job in just keeping it minimal, but still being able to get his point across and still have all of us in the chat feeling like, damn, this is like a dark, brooding beat. And I think I really love that. I think just for me personally, I would have liked a little bit more of a conventional idea in terms of the structure. But again, it has to do with like how the rapper would use it. Like, for example, the beat that I keep referring to, or the song that I keep referring to, Suicidal Thoughts, I mean, that doesn't have like a conventional clear hook. And so I think this beat might be better suited for a sort of song like that. But I think even if we did have a conventional structure to this beat, Abadi did a good job of creating all the textures that would be required to easily turn this into a very conventional framework, because he had those ARPs and he had those parts during the second half of the beat where we had additional layers come in. So I think I'm not worried about his ability to create enough for the hook to make it sound full, because that was already present in the beat. So yeah, awesome job, Abadi. That was very dark and scary. By the way, I was thinking of when we can take this sound pack and maybe have a little contest, maybe a little mini competition. This would be outside the Better Beatmaker competition. This would also include all the people on YouTube. Maybe we'll do like a little, whoever has the best beat using the sound pack could be the winner, and you guys would have a little head start here since you've already made a beat. But yeah, I was thinking about doing that. What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. And like I also mentioned, it is March soon. And like we talked about, we're going to have 3 Better Beatmaker competitions this year. So the next one's probably going to be coming around soon in April. So be on the lookout for that, guys. We've got some exciting stuff coming out. But let me know what you guys think about a competition. I wonder what the structure would be, just like top 3 get money or something. What would you guys want to see in terms of like prizes or something? Just let me know. Let me know if you guys have any ideas for that, and we'll let the wheel spin here. We're gonna have the Sherb Man coming up. Yeah, this wheel has no drama today. It's fed up. It's fed up with us. Always demanding drama. Always demanding more. The Sherb Man. Let's see what Sherb's got for us here. Entitled is the beat name. Let's go. That was the Sherb Man himself. Let's see what the chat's saying here. Cool snare, nice sax. I love the sax. Bass, a little over distorted in my opinion. Feeling this is a vibe. Some choppy parts, and the horn is a little loud, but feeling this. Oh, that's hard, says Secret Weapon Beats. Of course, my beat starts and my YouTube freaks out. I think the kick is either clipping or a little or just a little bit dense and quite loud. Love the actual sound choice. Joe says bass drum. I mean, the bass drum is over distorted. Love the clip distortion on the kick. Excellent choice on the bass sound layered with a high pitch key. The blend of it feels harmonic from the bass. The sax is lovely, but possibly a little too dominant. Maybe turn the volume down a little or some slight reverb. So I think a lot of you guys are picking up on things that I'm thinking as well. It's nice to see how synchronized we are in our thoughts. I really, really love a lot about this beat. I love the drum work for one, just the drum pattern that was created. Really, really awesome. I love the electric piano notes, the single one-shot keys, the sort of melodic pattern that you had every once in a while. I really, really love the way that sat in the beat. Such a great detail, and it plays, again, very infrequently, but once it does come in, it just feels a lot more special because of it. I know a lot of the times whenever I find certain sounds, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to make this to make a whole pattern. But this approach of just like having it play every once in a while just makes it sound so much more special in the beat. John Sherby says, it was another beat I struggled with. Interesting. The mix just needs a little bit of work, but great beat, says Red Octane. Okay, good. I spent too much time on the drums. Glad they ended up working out. Yeah, I really love the drum work. Great job in manipulating that sort of core sound in the low mid. So, of course, Google Drive is going to be annoying. But I believe this is from the Ear Candy, this thing here. I can't remember if the note itself is actually that long, but I think you did a good job of manipulating it, because I believe you stretched it out there. And yeah, I think that created such a good bed to build on top of, and everything that you did build on top, I think was really, 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 really well done. To what a lot of you guys are mentioning about the kick and the bass. So I do agree in that. I think there is a little bit excess presence in the low mid. So we have that, the Ear Candy expansion. So yeah, we have the electric piano here that's sitting in the sort of low mid area. And then we have a very colorful kick that has a lot of distortion on it. And then we also have the bass that has a lot of color and character as well. It's not as if it's just purely subby. It has a lot of textures sitting in that same frequency space as well. And so I think just controlling that pocket of frequencies, maybe just reducing how powerful the kick is, reducing how much color the bass has. I think it's just as easy as that. And like what Cora mentioned, I really, really think what you did with the sax was really awesome. How you used it to create a really good phrase that had perfect timing with every single other instrument. And then you used multiple different sax phrases as well. I think what Cora mentioned about it being a little bit too loud, I mean, that's as simple. I probably would have just added a little bit of reverb on it, maybe drop the volume, and, problem solved. I think what you did here, you mentioned that snare reminds me of that one Clip song. So yeah, you mentioned that, you really struggled with this beat, and it seems like you were not really sure whether it came out really as you wanted it. I really think this is an awesome beat. I think like we're talking about small little things about this frequency has a little bit too much in terms of the presence, and like the sax should be sitting a little bit further back. But in terms of like the big ideas, the very fundamentals of the beat, I think the actual beat that you put together, really, really well done. I love the bouncy bass line, how melodic it is. And just like I mentioned, that electric piano that you used as the way you did, really impressive as well. Such a smart way to just have it play every once in a while as opposed to creating a whole pattern. Made it feel really special in the beat. All the textures that you used, they filled up the beat in a way that was very pleasing and matched the aesthetic. So even though you said you struggled with this beat, I think the struggle was probably worth it, because this beat really, really came out well. So really awesome job to John Sherby. I think oftentimes John has really great insights on other people's beats, and we're starting to see him actually apply his sort of thinking on his own beats, because I feel like every single time we hear one of your beats, you're able to address some of the potential issues that you might not have noticed before. And so we're getting to the point where like we're sort of starting to nitpick smaller and smaller things, to the point where eventually, if you keep on this path, like you'll be making beats that will be flawless, hopefully. And then once you win your first Grammy, you'll thank the rest of the Better Beatmaker members, and we'll be getting Grammys ourselves. How about that, guys? Or we have our own award show, the Navies. That would be truly pathetic. Jesse's up next. Jesse Too Hazy. Let's highlight Sherb. And let's get to the Haze Man's beat here. Jesse's beat, Overdose. Let's take a listen. All right, that was Hazy's beat there. Jesse's Too Hazy. Always coming with it yet again. Another phenomenal beat. Yeah, I really don't have much to say in terms of negativity with this beat. Just such a great job of using the multiple pianos in so many different ways. First, I'll actually read the chat here. Good job of using panning to play with the stereo presence for the lows and the highs of the piano. The bass is smooth. The DJ scratches fit nicely. Got the old school West Coast vibes. Like the keys, and just when I wanted them to change up, he dropped them out, which is nice. The rides, love how rich the piano is, but you still found room to let the bass come in hard. Excellent arrangement. Very nice section. What bass is this? Nice switch up. Yeah, there were sounds in here that I was just like, I didn't know I even included that in the pack. The hard cuts really keep this fresh and not tiresome on the ears. Really like the switch up. Really clean mix. So yeah, I think what you guys are saying exactly what I feel. The use of the keys in so many different ways is really, really phenomenal. That's like not even an idea that really occurs to me often. We have this sort of echoey melodic piano. That's one layer. And then we have the stabby pianos that come in partway through the beat. We have this sort of piano that has like a very truncated feel, and that it feels a little bit more like a sample with the way that it was used. Such a phenomenal structure with this beat. I really love that switch up and that sort of gliding synth. I'm not even sure exactly, like I have that one G-funk-ish sound in the beat, or sorry, in the sound pack, but I think maybe if that was a sound that he used, he did such a good job of like, you know, adding some sliding effects onto it, so it slides from one note to another. Yeah, just top down, such a awesome beat through and through. Great mix. Love the bass as well. Love the percussion. Bass line is awesome. I really don't have anything to say. I think if I had to nitpick, I might have used a different, more straightforward snare. So as you guys heard with the snare in this beat, it has that sort of combo snare plus tambourine. And of course, the Google Drive is going to be a loser. So I think it might be because we have the tambourine as a percussion that's already existing in the beat, but the tambourine that sits along with the snare is a very different pitch compared to the tambourine that's used as a normal percussion in the beat. So that might be why it sort of stood out to me as a little bit jarring, so I might have just used a straightforward snare. But again, this is like a huge nitpick. I think this is such an awesome beat, and if this was something that was submitted for like one of the competitions that we have, this would definitely be like one of the contenders, and I think a lot of people here would agree, like this is such a clean, well-made beat using the sound pack. That was just phenomenal. I forgot, was this beat on SoundCloud or Google Drive? So actually, this is something I want to do. I keep forgetting to do this, but every single time we have an assignment, I would like to create a channel where I'm just going to dump the list of every single beat in it. So how about we do that right now real quick? Let me see if this actually works. So in the past streams, let's say I have the stream there, and then I'm going to say, if you go in the Discord, go in the past streams channel, I'm just going to simply copy and paste every single beat from that stream. So you guys can just easily, whoopsies. Yeah, so you guys can easily listen back to the beat and hear everyone's beat from that stream. I think this would be a smart and easy way of doing it. So yeah, if you want to listen to that beat again, there it is. And the Navi goes too. So yeah, there we go. Let's keep on reviewing beats. Phenomenal job to Jesse though. Beautiful, beautiful beat there. Did I highlight him? I did. Let's spin it up. We'll keep going for another 45-ish minutes. We've got Cora's beat up next. There we go. Well done to Cora for getting chosen. You worked very hard on... Where are you? Oh, I can't... There you are. I was about to have a panic attack there. Cora's beat's up next. Let's take a listen. All right, that was Clouds by Cora Beats. Let's see what the chat is saying here. Weird, but I kind of dig it. Cool industrial feel. Great beat. Love the emphasis you put on the kick with the sounds. Sounds like a winter ice level in a video game. Those chimes are spicy. They kind of clash with the pad and the bass, but in the audio equivalent of a Dutch tilt or the geography of the overlook. I have no idea what the hell that means. But with better drums. Cool and interesting vibe. Makes me confused, but in a good way. Maybe some variation as far as space when it comes to the different bells and chimes. Mesmerizing. I'm tranced. I like how the first half changes, but kept me guessing the second half. But the second half was a little bit monotonous to bring down the highs just a bit. Maybe some of the sounds during the chorus part are slightly out of key, but not sure if that was intentional with the whole sound of the beat, like a break with Bauer motion on the chimes. Love the pad in the background. So with this beat, I think what I really love about this is that it's very easy to, take the sounds from a boom bap sound pack and make a boom bap beat. But I think what Cora did here of making like a very hybridized beat and making a Cora Beats type beat here. I think this is exactly what Cora's sound is, and it feels like no matter what you give him, he can always find a way to like really introduce his own personality and create his own ideas. And I'm a big fan of Cora's beats, and I think this is a really awesome idea as usual. Awesome texture work. I mean, so many of these sounds probably had to be manipulated with a lot of effects, and I think Cora did a good job of adding effects to create his own ideas, as I mentioned. This amount of manipulation and the sort of sophistication with how the idea was put together was awesome. I know a lot of people mentioned that it felt a little bit eerie and a little bit sort of out of key at times, but I sort of didn't feel that in a way. I mean, I did get that sense of like almost discomfort with how sort of atonal some of the things are not atonal, but I guess just how eerie a lot of the note usage was, but I felt like it didn't really jump out to me as an issue. I really love the arrangement as well, with how much effort was put in to create a hook as well as a verse, and I think the beat was structured in a little bit of a conventional way, which was something that I really like to see from Cora as well. I think the thing with this beat was the balance between the drums and the instrumentation was a bit off, in that the drums felt a little bit weaker. It felt like the drums didn't cut through as much as maybe when Cora makes beats using trap drums, just because, inherently with a lot of these boom bap types of drums, they're going to have a lack of like the crispier textures, especially with like the hi-hats and the snares. They have a little bit less of that crack, especially with the way that I design them. And so I think the drums, because of that, might not be cutting through as much. But again, that's just an easy fix of like making them brighter. I think that's the one and only thing that jumped out to me. I guess the kick also wasn't cutting through as much. This just might be like my own sound setup here, but I think that was the one and only thing that to me could have been addressed. But other than that, like, I'm really impressed by how Cora was able to take the sounds from this pack and just create a Cora beat out of it. I turned the drum bus down last second. I was struggling with the kick to cut through the bass though. Should have turned up the side chain a little. I think it sounds like you used one of the sub basses from the pack, and those fucking things were really loud. And I just wasn't sure whether those types of basses were going to be helpful or useful compared to like the boom bap basses. I sort of had the idea to make them a little bit like, some of them at least, a little bit more like Dilla-esque, the way that he uses them. And so to use them in like a little bit more of a prolonged fashion might end up hurting the sort of kick and the bass relationship, just because with a lot of Dilla's beats, for example, there's like a pretty big gap between the kick and the bass, and the bass is often dragged, and so that's why they were able to cut through as easily. But like when you sort of have them a little bit more close, those types of basses can really easily get in the way of your kick. So that might be my bad. I probably should have controlled those basses a little bit and helped them have a better relationship with the kicks in the pack. But yeah, nonetheless, that was a really, really awesome job. I loved how eerie it was, and I'm a big fan of what you did with the arrangement as well. So good job on that. This is why, you know, he's one of the senior members here. Cora Beats, ladies and gentlemen. Let's spin it up. We've got probably 4-ish more beats. And like I mentioned, once again, if you do not get your beat reviewed during the stream, you will still get it reviewed later on in text form. So do not worry. We've got Sevi here. I feel like this wheel keeps spinning in this little area right after the name. No drama, come on. Sevi, you're up next. Let's take a listen to Sevi's beat. right, that's Sevi's beat there, called Wanderer. Ooh, cool little outro there. Let's see what the chat is saying about this beat. Nice bass line, cool loop. There's a resonance in there somewhere. That's got me cocking my head like a dog being shown a card trick. Jay Shiggy's got the most colorful analogies. I like the wobble on the keys, but feel some reverb could help them make I can't even speak English or read, could help make them feel a little bit more lively. Like the sax placement, I think the random high-pitched perk that comes in sometimes maybe a little bit out of key and clashes with the rest. Yeah, I think that came in during the hook section. Love the little fills that occasionally happen. I would like more of this, more of that to add a little bit more flavor. Hearing it now, it isn't a perk. What is that sound? I'm not sure what. It's like a little whistle sound or something. Some more drops or lengthy ones could have helped release some of the constant drums. Nice outro. That's a good idea. Solid. Love the jazz horns. The off-key occasional piano is nice, but blend it in with more effects. It stands out from the rest of the sounds, says the Phantom. So this really reminded me of like a Mobb Deep-esque. Oh, Sev is in here. This really reminded me of like a Mobb Deep-esque approach to beat making, where fundamentally what Sev did was he took like one phrase and then he repitched it down and then had that play back and forth. So we had that technique being used before and it didn't work as well, but I think with Sev's beat here, it did work a little bit better in that from what it sounded like, that's what Sev started with. So he took that piano phrase and then repitched it down, and then he built the music around that. And so he didn't have to worry about like, well, does this actually fit my loop that I'm building? Because he built everything around that sort of piano phrase and then having it pitched down. So I think that really helped everything come together and everything make sense musically speaking. It did feel like it had this sort of occasional off-key piano like the Phantom mentioned, but I didn't think as though, I think that was more a product of how the sample sounds when it's repitched, as opposed to like it being a completely wrong piano or completely wrong note in the actual beat. So yeah, it's just a really 90s technique here, and I think it really fit the aesthetic for what Sev was trying to build here. Good job of using noise as well to fill up the beat, this sort of using the static to make the high end feel a little bit more full. Like Red Octane sound or mentioned that sort of high pitched whistle sound. I'm not sure what that was from the sound pack, but it did feel a little bit awkward. Like I think that's the sound that you use to create a hook, but I'm not 100% sure whether that was something that fit and filled up enough to have it feel as if the energy level did pick up. It felt very slight, and it felt a little bit it didn't really match the aesthetic of the beat. It didn't have like a very dark feel to it. It sounded like a little like, when you move a desk around and then the wheels make a squeaking noise. A little bit odd. A mallet from the Boom Bap pack. Was it like pitched up like crazy? I think that's maybe what happened there. Sounds can really end up feeling very different from the original sound once you like repitch them to an exaggerated amount. But nonetheless, I think what you did here with the way you built the loop was really awesome. I think buffing the drums up a little bit, making them a little bit louder, could have really helped. One of the things that I mentioned in a lot of my boom bap videos is how helpful it can be to use a transient processor. So if you sort of struggle to get your beats to take up enough room, using transient processors on your drums can be really phenomenal. I think just merely increasing the volume, but other than that, I think Sev, you did a good job of like really creating a 90s dark Mobb Deep type of beat here, especially with the sampling technique of having it pitched up and down. I think you did a lot of smart things. I really love the bass line as well. You had it follow the sort of up and down piano pattern, and I think that's exactly why the piano worked as well as it did, because you're very smart with building around it as opposed to trying to cram it into your beat idea that you built and then have some sounds feel a little bit more awkward because of it. So yeah, good job to Sev. 7 up. Here we go with the next beat by Unrooted. I'm not even gonna bother looking at the wheel and seeing where it lands. We already know. Unrooted's up next. Here we go. All right, that was Unrooted's beat there called Sequenced. Very interesting beat there. Nice use of panning, says John Sherby. Was trying to help Unrooted last night after like 4 beats of struggling. Glad to see it. Red Octane's always helping people out here. Great to see that. Thank you, Red Octane. Great lead instrument, says Joe. I really like the more unique kick pattern. Wish it cut through a little bit better. Love the bass growl and the little ear candy details. Nice panning on the hi-hats. The second kick could use a little bit more punch though. That bass may be impacting the kick. I like the vibe and the instrumentation. Really good use of the little ear candy and perks. And as John mentioned, great panning on them. Maybe more sidechain to separate it from the bass more. Yeah, I think this beat was also like a very dark 90s type of beat, a little bit of that Mob Deep feeling once again. Unrooted did a really interesting job of like layering different samples on top of each other and creating a little bit of a collage type of approach to his beat. So we had like the sound that we could hear at the end here. It's like that was sort of repeating underneath, and then we had this ear candy sample, I believe, and then he pitched it down. So he just used a bunch of different pieces and then put them together to create something that actually sounded very, very cohesive. So that was really impressive that Unrooted was able to do that. That's a difficult technique to do at first, especially when you aren't sure whether everything has like the correct notes, especially with the ear candy folder. And how they can have multiple notes within one phrase. But Unrooted did a good job of making sure everything made sense musically speaking. I really like the sort of heavy bass that you used. Like Jay Shigley said, that sort of growling bass. And I think you did a good job of adding a lot of smaller details into the beat, like the sort of reversed percussion noises and a lot of the smaller unique details and whatnot. Yeah, and so I think the beat was put together in a way where, yeah, that's something else I wanted to mention actually. I really like the sort of guitar type of sound that you used here. Again, a little bit of that sort of Mob Deep type of feel with like the Shook Ones type of aesthetic there. Yeah, I think the drums, I would say, like you guys were mentioning, could use a bit of work. The low end, like you guys are saying, it isn't cutting through, and you can see by the waveform, it looks like the bass is just very, very dominant. So this is the part without bass, and just visually you can see it's a little bit quiet, and then once the bass does come in. And having that loud of a bass isn't a problem by any means, but as you can notice, it's going to be a little bit difficult to get the kick to sound actually sort of cut through because of it. And I think in the high end, well, I guess the bass is tilted towards the low end a little bit because of how powerful a lot of those sounds are. I think he did a good job of filling up the high end using that static once again. You can hear it here. And then he used like smaller percussive sounds in the beat. I think maybe adding a little bit of reverb onto that guitar could have been nice. Yeah, because there's not many instruments that have a little bit of depth to them. The snare does have a little bit of reverb from the sounds of it, but just a little bit of a sort of depth rebalancing could have helped. But overall, I think this is a really awesome job Unrooted did here. It's such a difficult technique, especially if you're using one shots to like, and using phrases as well, like that are in the ear candy folder. It can be hard to get everything to sort of work together and sound cohesive and make sense. But I think Unrooted did a good job of that. And thank you to Red Octane for helping him. That's awesome that you went out of your way to help him with this beat. And I'm sure Unrooted really appreciates that. So good job to Unrooted there. I'm interested to hear your progression because you're making a lot of progression there. Let's spin it up. We'll have time for at least 2 more, I think. Is this no, it's not the first dramatic one. It's always in this area right here. Come on, wheel. You're letting us down. Doomed Traveler's up next. Let's see what he's got for us.
God's a motherfucker, isn't he? Built me smart enough to know how fucked up my life is, but not quite smart enough to haul my ass out of it.
That was Doomed Traveler, the winner of my favorite beat from the last competition. Very different type of beat here, very summery and very like happy. This beat is called The Pit. So let's see what the chat is saying here. The static may be a bit loud. I love the distortion on the keys, but it also feels a bit loud. Nice chords. I like the amount of saturation in the chords, says Crowtown. Those chimes are such a great touch. Love the quick pauses in the arrangement. The static is a bit much, and that droning sound that comes in is just out of place with such a more ethereal sounding beat. Lo-fi beat, I dig it, but the mix is as Cora mentioned. Like everyone else, that bass line is great. Also a beat that sounds happy for once. That's funny. Agreed. I really didn't catch that droning sound at first, and it stood out to me right as I was reading your comment. This is way happier than I was expecting, especially with the intro sample, but those womp sound, I think you guys are talking about the same thing. That comes in occasionally, give it an extra hidden sense of hidden darkness. Really love that texture. So many great bass lines today. That's a good point. Awesome aesthetic, great sound choice. So yeah, I agree with you guys in that very happy, joyful beat. And usually I don't go for those, but I really like this one. Very summery. The sun is out. Maybe that's why it has me feeling good. So with Doom's beat here, really great job with the drum work. I really love the chord progression as well. Has a very cool summery feel. As also noted down here, I really love the bass line here, especially the very half of the loop, the sort of downwards bass line, how that was the pattern that was created. It really helped create that sense of like summer whimsy, summer fun. That really stood out to me. I do agree about the amount of like distortion and noise in the beat. It did feel a bit over the top in terms of how loud the noise was and how much distortion was on the keys. I don't think the noise itself on the keys was a problem. Just the amount that was used was a little bit too much. Outside of that, though, like there's so much small detail in here that I really liked, especially during the hook. We had a bunch of different sounds. We had a bell and a mallet that came in. I think having that mallet maybe played during the verse, that sort of small, like 2 or 3 notes at the end of each loop, that would have been nice. Yeah, those 2 notes, dun dun. Maybe just having like a little bit of those extra details. Maybe just that one sound during the actual verse, just because for the most part the verse was just chords. So just having one additional texture could have been an idea. But yeah, really phenomenal job with how many different sounds and layers were used during that hook, and how everything sounded and felt so natural, and everything still worked. Like that's a difficult thing to pull off, and I think Doom did it very well. I didn't really feel as though the textures sort of stood out to me as like jarring. I know a lot of you guys did mention that sort of, I don't know what it was, like a string maybe. I'm not going to be able to find it now, but like that sort of womp sound. It did jump out to me as something that stood out, but I sort of liked it. It had a little bit of character to it that was a little bit different than the actual chords and like the summery feel. Yeah, I felt like as it was something that stood out, but it didn't really feel like it was like the wrong notes. Yeah, maybe that was like the thing that showed up instead of that sort of vibe sound that helped the beat have a little bit more character throughout. Summer, not in Germany. The weather is weird in Washington. Snow on the ground, yet sunny as hell. Same thing here. There's snow everywhere, but it is sunny. In Stuttgart, it's dark and cold with a little snow. I could be projecting, but this beat feels like smiling through the pain. Oh, wow. That's so insightful. All right, and we're talking about the weather. Let's have we should have a weather type beat challenge. Make a sunny type beat, make a rainy type beat. That'd be interesting. Or it could be quite stupid, who knows. Let's go ahead and spin it up. We'll have time for one more. And like I mentioned, the people who do not get their beat reviewed this time will get their beats reviewed in an actual text. Having said that though, we did Rosfo's beat. You know what? If it is all right with you guys, Anomalous212, he is a new member. So I'm just going to do a little bonus review here. I'm going to do Anomalous just because I want to make sure everyone who's new does get their beat reviewed from me at least once. So let's listen to his, and then we'll do one more after this. From the rest of you guys. Hopefully that's all right. Let's jump into Anomalous's beat here. All right, that was Anomalous's beat. By the way, when I bonk into the mic like this, does that create an annoying sound on your guys' end? Let me know. Because I remember with the old mic, it would be quite annoying. So, yeah, Anomalous. Let me make sure I pronounce that right. Anomalous 212. That was the beat there. Let's see what you guys are saying here. Liking the vibe so far. The sax really gives it some sass. That one key sound is a bit off key, at least to me. Otherwise, everything else seems to work well. Also dig the bass and the stomping drums. The bass is great. The textures are awesome. I like this. I love the sound selection. I feel it might be a bit muddy though. I think some frequency masking and gain staging would make it even better. I like that chanting sound in the background. That was a cool sound at the end for sure. Excellent syncopation in the opening. Really like the tonality of the sounds. This feels more like an exposition than a beat though, with like a little bit more cohesion or a theme, says Jay Shiggity. Not sure about the scratches and the change up. Bonking, not that noticeable. Excellent. The spring on the arm resonates a bit. It's fine. All right though. So here's my take with his beat. Again, Anomalous is a newer member, so I want to keep that in mind. I don't know if it's the nature of the actual challenge here. But what I would say is that what Jay Shiggity mentioned was interesting in that I felt the same way in that I like all the textures that were used, really interesting. The way that they were used, very interesting as well. My concern, I want, like, again, this is going to be something that's going to be ongoing with Anomalous, and I'd love to hear them submit continuously. What Jay Shiggity mentioned about this feels more like an exposition than a beat. So what my concern is that I think Anomalous did a good job of using one shots at different pitches at the very beginning of the beat to create that sort of core loop idea here. Once again, Google Drive is going to be goofy. So we have some static, great way to fill space. And then we have this one instrument playing at different pitches. So a great start to sort of create a basic framework for the beat. Typically from here, what I would like to see is that like other instruments get brought in and different patterns are created. But what Anomalous sort of ended up doing was he kept the beat interesting and filled up space in his beat using other sounds in more like novel ways, in that, you know, we heard he used a sort of more booming kick at one point that had different characteristics than the actual kick that he used before. And then we have a lot of these sort of phrases that were added on top, these sort of one shots from the ear candy sample pack folder, like this area here. And then we have like multiple different ones being used over and over again. And so what I would like to see from Anomalous, again, this just might be the nature of the challenge, and that this is the sort of direction that he went in. I would like to see a little bit more pattern building fundamentally, to just use a single note and figure out how to build an actual pattern yourself, as opposed to just relying on these sort of novel change-ups of like, oh, I'm going to use this sound now for this section, I'm going to use this new sound here, new sound over there, to keep your beat interesting and keep your loop sounding interesting and engaging to the listener, just merely based off of the patterns that you built, as opposed to having a new novel sound come in every 5, 10, 20 seconds. I think that's what I would like to see from Anomalous going forward. What Red Octane mentioned about like gain staging, frequency masking. When I first start listening to a new member's beats, I want to sort of think about what are the fundamentals that the person should focus on. And I think that is the one thing that I would say about this beat. And something that I want to think about going forward. Again, this just might be the nature of the challenge, but the idea of, can this producer build a pattern that sort of makes sense with the remaining sounds in his beat, instead of just focusing on like novelty. I think that's my takeaway with his beat. For Anomalous, focus on loop construction and figuring out how to build multiple patterns using multiple sounds, using the frameworks that I mentioned in the course of like, always think about what space needs to be filled next, what pattern, what is the right pattern. Think about what the other patterns, sounds in your beats are doing, and whether they have a high degree of complexity or low degree, and then build your patterns with that framework. So yeah, just use what you learn in the course. I think he was a recent sign from last week or 2 weeks ago. So maybe you didn't get to that point yet in the course, but think about what I talk about in the very first section of the course, especially. That's going to be very important. So let's do one last spinneroo. Anomalous is still on here. So if he gets chosen, we won't listen. But Sight. Sight is the last beat that we will listen to. And again, if you did not get your beat chosen, you will get a follow-up. So do not worry at all, my friends. Let's listen to Sight's beat, and then we'll call it a day. Bus Stop.
It's on site.
All right, that was Sight's beat there, a dancey type of beat there, K-Tronada type of beat. He's in the chat. This is a longer ramp up beat. I hope you like it. Cool vibe so far. All good. Got to experiment with different things. Love the claps in the back, slightly pan slightly. Oh yeah, I dig this. I finally played with panning and I love the way it turned out. Nice bass line, such a great bounce, and I really like the style of bass you chose. Quite unique for the style of beat. Yeah, I'm feeling it. Such great progress. Interesting direction for pulling from a boom bap pack. I can absolutely picture staring out the window on a bus, lounging. Great sound choice and good rhythm once it got going. Why do the chords remind me of a PS1 menu sound? Awesome one. Yeah, with this beat, I really like the direction here. Once again, just awesome to see how a boom bap pack can be used in different ways. I really liked the manipulation that was done on that main sound, especially as you can hear in the intro here. And like you guys mentioned, the panning is really awesome just to fill up more room, and the types of percussion that are used, that sort of weird reversed, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like a reverse of one of the sticks from the pack. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, such an awesome way of filling up space on the beat using more unique textures. So the beat starts, and then we have like a 4 on the floor. And then I think that point with what was done with the more bass texture here, it didn't really help the beat, I think. So we had this bass that really basically followed exactly what the chords were doing, using the first sound that we heard. I think personally I would have liked to just start off with a very bouncy bass line similar to what you used or what you built later on in the beat. Like I would have liked for that bass line to like jump in a lot sooner. That was one thing that I would say. And I think, I mean, you were a bit limited in the sounds that you could use, obviously, with this challenge. I think the beat probably would have been a little bit more full if you could use more of like a funky, more colorful type of bass for this beat. Obviously, again, you were limited to what was in the pack, so the beat wasn't necessarily built for these types of, or say the pack wasn't built for these types of beats. But even maybe just layering a guitar on top of the bass, and so then you have a lot more color on it, just because I really like the bass line that you built for this area. And I think it perfectly, in terms of the pattern that was built, it perfectly fits the need of what the beat requires at this part of the actual structure and the arrangement. I think just making it a little bit more colorful just so we can hear it a little bit more would have been nice, just because it fills up the low end really well, but there's only a few notes where I can actually audibly hear it in terms of the frequencies jumping up high enough to get to the sort of mid area. But yeah, like all the textures in terms of the percussion was really awesome. All the claps that you used, the amount of effects that you used, everything else was really well done, and the beat really felt full. Yeah, the first bass I put, it was to fill up space. It also feels off key to me. I don't know why. It sat in a different frequency space. It felt like it sat a little bit higher up. Like it's not a sub bass by any means, so maybe that's why. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I think the bounciness of the beat really came through once you added in that new bass line. I would have really liked a little bit more emphasis on that bass line. And I think other than that though, like this beat really did feel like a more dancey K-Tronada funky type of beat, and the sun is shining, and this beat makes me feel like I want to be out there dancing in the sun. I think it feels that way because the kick has a lot of higher frequency, so when the bass is following the chords and not playing higher notes, they clash. That's a really good point. I think Red Octane's on point with that astute observation. Yeah, I feel like dance music needs to be much tighter regarding tuning, whereas boom bap gives a lot more leeway. Yeah, it's interesting too. I mean, boom bap is known to be a little bit more rough with the mixes, so you don't really need to be on point. But yeah, guys, hopefully you had fun. The people remaining here will get their beats reviewed. Do not worry. You'll get a follow-up from one of the Better Beatmaker senior members in the following days. And yeah, we'll have the next challenge up tomorrow, and we'll have 2 for the month of March, I believe. 1, 2, and then we're gonna jump right into the April Better Beatmaker competition. So we have 2 more assignments than the Better Beatmaker competition with cash prizes once again. So tell everyone that you know that it's about to happen, or don't, if you want to improve your chances of winning. So yeah, hopefully you guys had fun. Thank you once again for coming, and thank you for putting up with my ugly sweater. And I will be talking to you guys very shortly with some more fun stuff. Oh, I forgot to mention, I did land an Arturia discount, so I'm going to be including that, and I'll announce a little bit more about that tomorrow. So yeah, if you want to buy some Arturia stuff, you can get a discount by being a Better Beatmaker member. That's about it. I forgot to mention that earlier on. I probably should have led with that because a lot of people like Arturia. But anyways, yeah. We'll see you guys later. I'm about to go and sip on the rest of this water here. Have a good day. Have a good rest of the weekend. And I'll see you guys later.